In this report, I'll share the top 8 reasons not to retire early overseas. Over the years, I've learned many reasons why people have decided not to retire early overseas. Retiring early overseas or living overseas is not for everyone, but many people have fantasies they never try for various reasons. But if you think about these reasons early enough, you may be able to overcome each one. Why do I know this? I'm a 62-year-old man that left the United States 16 years ago. I've lived in or visited 67 countries so far, so I constantly meet people who retired early overseas. The beautiful woman you see traveling the world with me is Chung of Hobo Ventures. Okay, 2 main barriers to retiring early overseas. There's 2 kinds of barriers people face in retiring early overseas. The first kind of barrier is called an expectation barrier. Living in a foreign country often creates major changes in daily routines that may fall below your expectations. Life experiences overseas, such as food, entertainment, relationships, and hobbies, may fall below your expectations. Some people feel like a fish out of water in a new country. I will share how I overcome this first kind of barrier in a moment. But first, I want to focus on the second kind of barrier. The second barrier is more dependent upon personal conditions that exist in your life. People like you have shared them with me over the years. Here are the top 8 reasons not to retire early overseas that people have shared with me and how I would overcome each one. Make sure to think about these thoroughly and do proper research before retiring early overseas. You don't need to take notes. I'll provide a link to a written version at the end. Okay, number 1, pre-existing health conditions. If you have a pre-existing health condition and you're comfortable with your healthcare provider, you may decide to wait until you complete your course of treatment before retiring overseas. But if it is a lifelong condition, you may not want to wait. Your other choice would be to locate a healthcare provider overseas that is a specialist in that specific treatment. In fact, you have probably heard about a whole new industry called medical tourism. People employ healthcare specialists overseas who may even provide better care for less money. It may require time to find the best and brightest overseas, but it could allow you to live your dreams overseas for less money. Okay, number 2, vulnerable dependents. If you have someone in your life that is vulnerable and needs help getting through life, you may decide to stick around until their life or circumstances become more stable or they pass away. A vulnerable dependent could be a person or an animal that would not survive comfortably if you were to retire early overseas. Depending upon the condition of your vulnerable dependent and their ability to travel, you might consider bringing them overseas with you. In some cases, living overseas is so much cheaper, you might be able to hire a full or part-time nurse or support personnel. Having others help you carry the burden may give both you and your vulnerable dependent a better life. Okay, number 3, unusual drugs or treatment. I don't consistently take any prescription drugs to manage my health, but I have learned from others living overseas that many of the common prescription drugs are available overseas. But you should not assume that any drug is readily available in a foreign country. Instead, join a Facebook group for expats living in your target overseas city and ask them if that drug is available. If they do not know, ask them the name of a pharmacy in that town. Email the pharmacy and ask if your prescription drug is readily available, what it costs, and whether or not you need a prescription for a refill. Brand names vary, so tell them the active ingredient also. Pharmaceutical drugs around the world are often even made by the same manufacturers as they are in the USA or Europe, but you can often buy them for a fraction of the cost that you would have to pay in the West. In fact, I just saved 75% on a Hep A/B vaccine overseas. It was the same product made by the same manufacturer, so I saved 75% on an identical medication. Instead of paying $180 US, I paid $45. But be careful. When you live overseas and you are coming home to visit family and friends, They may ask you to buy drugs to save them money, but some drugs they request could be controlled substances even when they are over-the-counter drugs in a foreign country. If you enter your home country with those drugs, you are smuggling controlled substances, which could land you in jail for a very long time. So before you buy any drugs for friends overseas, Google the ingredients to see if it is a controlled substance. That might keep you out of jail. Okay, number 4, mental health. If you are under the care of a mental health professional, ask them their thoughts on the challenges you may encounter if you were to relocate overseas. Some people adapt more easily to the chaos of change that happens in their first few months or years living overseas. The U.S. State Department has developed informational content for their employees working overseas. I will include a link to a report that shares the 4 emotional phases that many people go through when they move overseas. Even if your mental health care provider feels you're ready, you should review this content. Just knowing the 4 phases may create a softer landing during your first year of living overseas. Heck, everyone should watch this because it really applies to everyone. Okay, number 5, living your life's purpose. Some people are so engaged and connected to their existing life in their home country that they will not be willing to give it up. If you are one of the lucky ones that's living their life's purpose, then you may be unwilling to give it up. In that case, I would follow my heart and keep living my life's purpose. In fact, that's what I'm doing. I enjoy creating content about retiring cheap overseas as I travel the world, so I will not give it up until I'm no longer intellectually capable. But ask yourself one question. If you're living your life's purpose and don't want to quit, does my life's purpose require me to sit in one place the rest of my life? Is there a way to live my life's purpose while enjoying the world at the same time? Could meetings be on video calls while I'm living in paradise? Could I employ someone to do things that need to be done on the ground back home while I'm in paradise? Is there a way to do my life's purpose from another part of the world? And if you're not living your life's purpose, what will you do with your time in retirement? Many get bored in retirement after the first year or 2. Maybe you could find your life's purpose after you retire. I have 2 other reports that explain how to find a purpose-filled retirement so you'll never get bored, and how to overcome the depression that some people feel in retirement. It can be as simple as helping other people in some simple way. Okay, number 6, your pension is too low. Some people just keep working until they're much older because they believe their pension or Social Security is too low, or because they don't believe they have enough savings to retire. For example, if they want to retire at age 55 and their parents lived until age 80, they may estimate that they'll live until about the same age as their parents. So at age 55, they may estimate they will live 25 more years to reach age 80. But if their pension doesn't kick in until they are about 65, they may need to support themselves for 10 more years before their pension starts. If they have a 401k, they will quickly learn that they cannot access those funds without penalty until age 59 and a half. But if they have savings or other investments, they may decide to use or live on that other savings until they reach age 59 and a half, when they can access their 401k without penalty. The problem with taking these kinds of risks is that there's too many variables that remain unknown. Like, what if they outlive their parents by 10 years? What if the inflation ruins their plans? What if they have health care or other emergencies that cause them to dip into their savings and they have to go back to work? Will age discrimination keep them out of the workforce? Many people just decide they're unwilling to take these risks, so they just keep working until they're older. The closer they are to death when they retire, the less likely they are to run out of money while they're still alive. Inflation and running out of money are 2 of the biggest fears that keep people working until they're much older. Since this is the biggest fear people report, I will share my solutions to this one after I share reasons 7 and 8 of why people do not retire early overseas. Okay, number 7, health care insurance overseas. Some people self-insure when they retire early overseas, but that means you'll need to have a stack of cash to pay for whatever healthcare needs arise as you age. It is true that in some parts of the world, Healthcare is both very good and much cheaper than in the USA. However, most people would prefer to get healthcare insurance when they retire overseas. But insurance companies overseas are not always required to insure people with pre-existing conditions or to insure people once they get to a certain age. To overcome these limitations, I've met people overseas who just plan on flying home if they get sick overseas. One guy I met in the Philippines flies home to the USA every few years to get operations on his back that are covered by his senior care in the USA. So he just pays as he goes for his more routine healthcare needs when he is in the Philippines, and he flies home once every other year or so to get more expensive procedures that are covered by his senior care in his home country. Okay, number 8, safety net. When reading about strategies for retiring early overseas, many people learn about the concept of having a safety net. A safety net is one of the ways people overcome the fear of running out of money in retirement. A safety net is a plan to have a reservoir of extra money or an extra income stream that will be available to you in case you experience multiple emergencies in retirement or inflation turns out to be higher than your estimates. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not qualified to tell you how large your safety net should be, but I will share with you how I set my safety net for retirement. I will include a link to my safety net strategy in the safety net paragraph at the first link below this video. Okay, I would really appreciate if you could share any other limitations that I missed in the notes below this video. Okay, so I left 3 questions unanswered above. I promised to share how I overcome the 2 biggest fears, inflation and running out of money, and I promised to share how I overcame the expectation barrier. There are 2 things I do that have helped me overcome all 3 of these questions. The exploratory visit. I do what I call an exploratory visit. I visit 1 or more target cities overseas. I stay long enough to determine what it would cost and what it would feel like living there. Is there enough going on to keep me entertained? Can I find food I want to eat? What would it cost me to live there? I go look at apartments and see what they cost. I check out the restaurants and see if I would be happy eating there. I decide if I would feel safe living there. I do an estimate of the cost of living based on all the data I gather. So I go see it with my own eyes and I decide if I can live there and what it would cost to live there. Once I have my own numbers, it's easier for me to decide if I have enough money to retire early overseas and whether or not it meets my expectations for living overseas. I have a course called the Retire Overseas course where I discuss how to do all this. I will put a video about that below so you can find out more if you're interested. The exploratory visit helps me overcome my expectations barrier and my fear of running out of money. But an exploratory visit does not deal with my fear of rapid inflation. That remains unpredictable. So here is my inflation strategy. I have 2 ways I hedge inflation. First, I try to live on less than my monthly income. I'm not able to live on less every month, but I do it as often as possible. I do my best to grow my nest egg monthly so I'm prepared for an unpredictable future inflation. Second, I grow my monthly income each month. Somehow I knew I would get bored in retirement well before I ever decided to retire. I'm one of the best people I know at goofing off. But I eventually get bored and want something more substantial to stay engaged in my life. In 2009, I read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. In that book, he talks about starting an online internet muse that throws money at you no matter where you are in the world. Since world travel was in my future, I began reading about online businesses. It took me forever to find the right online muse for me. I spent thousands of dollars on online courses, but none of it felt right for me. But eventually, I was able to create an online muse that makes money doing my favorite hobby, world travel. In appreciation for your help in making all my dreams come true, I created a course that will help you set up an online muse with your favorite hobby, and I'm giving the course as a bonus to my existing and my new members of vagabondbuddha.com. To learn more about the Hobby Income course, click the video in the upper right-hand corner of your screen now. For a written version of this report, along with all the links discussed, click the first link in the notes below this YouTube video.